After searching for and purchasing just the right boat, and having it delivered from Florida to near Albany, New York, I needed to move the boat the last few hundred miles to Rochester, New York. First, I recruited an unsuspecting volunteer for the effort. In this case, Charles Cady of Syracuse was up for the adventure. The plan was to travel by train to Hudson, New York, and rendezvous with the boat across the Hudson River at the Riverview Marina in Catskill. After sharing a couple of drinks with the weary crew and getting the lowdown on the boat systems from the owner, Charles and I spent a long, hot day preparing the boat to have the masts removed. This was necessary to navigate the Erie and Oswego canals, which had numerous bridge crossings, some as low as 19 feet. After securing the masts and topping up the fuel tanks, we headed north up the Hudson River and the 30 miles or so to the entrance of the Erie Canal. The first 5 locks of the eastern entrance of the canal come in quick succession, and the effort to keep the boat from scraping the walls was considerable. The currents generated by the water flooding the locks pushed against the 6-foot 3-inch draft of the boat, and Charles, positioned amidship, took the brunt of the load. After 5 of these locks in just over an hour, we earned a well-deserved respite and tied up in Crescent, New York. In Canajoharie, New York, the next evening, the main dock along the canal was full, and with no other option, we pulled into a side creek to tie up along the concrete wall. And immediately, we stuck the keel firmly in the mud. After attempts to power out of the situation failed, I dispatched Charles with the dinghy, the anchor, and about 60 feet of chain. Charles deposited, with some difficulty, the anchor behind our boat, and the combination of the anchor windlass and reverse thrust freed us from the mud. Only later did I tell Charles that I had only read about this maneuver, called kedging off, and that I was surprised that it actually worked. Over the 5 days of the trip, we motored 52.5 hours, negotiated 30 locks, including the 40-foot lift, the highest on the canal, in Little Falls. We also traversed the length of Oneida Lake in perfectly still water and finished with a 53-mile nail-biter in Lake Ontario. It had been blowing about 15 knots out of the north the evening before we entered Lake Ontario, and it continued to blow for the duration of our transit. This created steep 4 to 6 foot seas directly on our beam, which pitched the boat side to side. Of the 3 supports holding the masts above the deck, The one furthest forward rocked out of position, and the middle support came apart completely. Only by improvising some additional support in the rear did we avoid having hundreds of pounds of aluminum come crashing down on the boat, or worse yet, on us. But in the end, the boat and crew arrived safely in Rochester. I'd like to thank Luke and Greg for delivering the boat from Florida on time, Grant, the previous owner of the boat, for going over the boat systems, which was in fact quite helpful, and especially Charles for working long, hot days to make this trip a success. Thanks.